Konnichiwa! Hi everyone, welcome back to my kitchen. Well, if you haven't guessed it, today I'm cooking Japanese food. And I'm gonna be showing you two very simple yet popular Japanese soups. Now the first one, if you've ever eaten sushi or gone to a Japanese restaurant before, you've probably had this soup already, or at the very least you've heard of it, and that's miso soup. And the second soup I'm making is a noodle soup called udon soup. Now there are a couple of different versions of udon. The one I'm making today is just the basic udon soup, but you can find ones chicken udon, beef udon, nebiyaki udon, which has fish cake in it, katsune udon, which has like a sweetened fried bean curd in it. But today's udon is just a basic simple soup. So, enough talking. Let's get cooking. So we're gonna start off by making a dashi. Now to be honest, I typically use an instant dashi. This is Dashi is the brand, and it's just granules and you add it to water and you have instant dashi. And the reason I do that is not because dashi is difficult to make, it's not time consuming at all. It's just I don't always keep these items, the necessary items to make a fresh dashi in my pantry all the time. So the dashi I'm making today is probably one of the more common, if not the most popular type of dashi. So we're gonna be using kombu, which is dried kelp, and we're gonna be using bonito flakes, which is an aged dried bonito fish, and then they just flake it up into little papery flakes. Now, if you're a vegan, vegetarian, you can make a dashi using just the dried kelp and dried shiitake mushrooms, and you would take the mushrooms and steep them in a bowl of warm water, maybe a cup or so of water, for 30 minutes to an hour, and then you would use the liquid from the shiitake mushrooms along with the kelp and some water to make your vegan dashi. So for today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you the dashi that I like and use, and that's the one with the bonito flakes. Let's get started on the dashi. Here are our ingredients for the dashi. We're going to need a total of 4 cups of water and a ½ ounce of kombu or dried kelp. And I have that amount right here. We also need bonito flakes, 2 packed cups of bonito flakes. Let's put our water in the pot. Here's 2 cups of water. And another 2 cups of water to total 4 cups of water. Let's turn on the heat to medium and bring up to a simmer. We're also going to add our dried kelp. Now that this has come up to a simmer, let's add our 2 cups of bonito flakes. We're going to simmer this for about 5 minutes. Don't let it come to a full rolling boil. Next, we're going to strain the dashi broth through some paper towel and discard the dried kelp and bonito flakes. Squeeze the paper towel to get all the broth out. Be careful, it's extremely hot. Now that we've prepared our dashi, let's focus on the ingredients for the miso soup. We need the most important ingredient, and that is miso paste. Miso paste typically comes in two kinds, like a red or dark, and a white soybean paste. And we need the white soybean miso paste. You're also gonna need some firm tofu. We're not gonna use the entire package because we're only using 2 cups of broth for a bowl of miso. So we're just gonna cut off a couple of pieces and cube it up and put it into our soup. You'll also need 1 scallion and then dried seaweed. So this is totally up to you as far as how much you wanna use. I don't like too much seaweed in my miso soup. I like a little bit. The tofu and seaweed ratio, I kind of the same. I'm weird like that. So I typically will use about 2 tablespoons, maybe 1/8 of a cup of dried seaweed, because this stuff will double, triple, quadruple in size. So believe it or not, this much, and we'll just break it up like this. And then I won't even use all of that. I'll probably just use 1/8 of a cup of dried seaweed for my miso soup. Then what we're gonna do is take a bowl of water, it's just cold water, and take our dried seaweed and just let it soak for about 5 or 10 minutes, comes back to life, and I'll show you what it looks like. Here's our seaweed after 5 or 10 minutes of soaking. It started out like this, and now is this. Let's gather it up and squeeze out some of the water. Cut the seaweed into bite-sized pieces. Let's open our tofu. We're going to quickly rinse this under cold water to remove some of the brine. Carefully take it out of the package and run it under some cold water. And then dry carefully with some paper towel. Now we're going to cut 2 1/4-inch slices off the block of tofu. And put the remaining tofu off to the side. Now cut down the center, and then again across to make cubes. Let's chop up our scallion. Cut it in half and slice. Here's our soybean or miso paste. This is what it looks like. We're going to measure out 2 tablespoons of miso paste and use a small kitchen strainer to push the miso paste through into the dashi broth. Let's add our 2 cups of dashi broth to the pot. Turn it up to medium, bring up to a simmer, but don't let it boil. Now we're going to add our 2 tablespoons of miso paste, one at a time, pushing it through the sieve. Don't worry if you don't have a kitchen sieve. You can just add the miso paste directly to the dashi broth and keep stirring until it dissolves. Add the seaweed. Put as much or as little as you like. And some tofu. Lastly, our scallions. Let's give it a quick stir and then serve it. So here's our yummy miso soup. Just give it a stir. You want to taste it. Okay, it smells so good. Here we go. Oh my gosh. Dare I say this is better than what I've had at a Japanese restaurant. Really good. Lovely. Let's get started on our second soup, the noodle soup, udon soup. Next, let's get working on our udon soup. We'll need 2 cups of dashi, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, some sake, some soy sauce, some mirin, Japanese udon noodles. Now you can find these in an Asian market, either fresh, but more typically frozen like this. Okay. If you don't have an Asian market close by that you can pick up either fresh or frozen udon noodles, they do sell them dried in a package. You would just need to follow the instructions on how to cook those, strain them, rinse them with cold water, and set them aside. Moving on, I'm going to be putting in my udon some colossal shrimp, some scallion, some mushrooms. I don't have shiitake, I happen to have baby Bella mushrooms, so that's what I'm using. And some fresh spinach that I'm going to quickly clean, cut down the stems, blanch in some water for about 30 seconds, pull it out and set it to the side and add it to my soup at the end. Here I have some spinach, and I'm just going to cut the ends off and then blanch it quickly in some water. Add the spinach to the simmering water and stir. It only takes about 30 seconds. Move the spinach around to help it cook evenly. Once the spinach is done, remove it from the hot water. Place the spinach on some paper towel and pat dry. We're going to set this aside and add it to the soup at the end. Chop 1 scallion. Set the scallion aside. Next, we're going to work on our mushroom. We're going to add a decoration. You can skip this step, but it makes it look pretty. Here I have some boiling water on the stove. I'm going to place the frozen udon noodles in the water to thaw them out and bring them back to life. It should only take a minute or two for them to thaw out. Once the noodles are cooked, strain them. And run them under some cold water to keep them from sticking. Then just set aside. Now we're going to make our soup base. Turn the heat up to medium and add the 2 cups of dashi. Next, we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now let's add 2 tablespoons of sake. Then 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And finally, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of mirin. Bring it up to a simmer. Don't let it boil. Once the broth is simmering, we can add our mushrooms and shrimp. Place the lid on the pot and let simmer for about 2 or 3 minutes. After a few minutes, remove the lid. Stir it around and check to see if the shrimp are cooked. If they are, remove them and place them in a bowl and set aside. Continue cooking the mushrooms. After another minute, the mushrooms should be cooked through. Now we're going to add our noodles to the broth to heat them up. Stir the noodles around for another 30 seconds. Then turn off the heat. So our soup is ready to assemble. So we are going to take some chopsticks and a strainer, and we're going to grab some noodles. Let me just move that to the side. Whoops. Pick those up. And then one mushroom came out when I was scooping, but here's the other mushroom. So 2 mushrooms. Our 2 shrimp. Whoops, he jumped right out. Our 2 shrimp. And then our bunch of spinach. We're just gonna cut that in half. I'm just going to use half in the bowl. And our scallions. And let's ladle some broth. Ooh. Okay. Now let's taste it. Very good. Chewy, thick, dense noodles. Kind of a sweet but savory broth. I'm going to save the shrimp for later, off camera. Let's have a little sake. Kanpai. Here's a fun fact for you. Hollywood would lead you to believe that sayonara is the way to say goodbye. But Japanese people don't really use that term because it's too permanent. It literally means like goodbye forever, like that's it, goodbye. So casually, Japanese people use 2 terms. One is jane, which means see ya, and the other one is matane, and matane means see you later. So I'm gonna leave you with matane.